A humiliated nurse. A dying patient everyone ignored. What happens when the person with nothing is the only one willing to give everything? This isn't just some sweet love story. This is the story of how one single act of kindness, in a cold, calculating hospital, triggered a plot twist that would change everything. Ever felt invisible? Ever wondered if kindness actually matters in a world obsessed with money? Well, and Ray felt that every single day, humiliated by her colleagues for daring to care about the poor patient. But here's the kicker she didn't see coming. The dying man in bed 12, this Jeff Moody, was holding a massive secret. He wasn't just any patient. He was a billionaire in disguise, running a brutal secret identity kindness test. And he was about to teach everyone a lesson. Brace yourself for an emotional roller coaster. What kicks off as a typical rich man poor woman drama morphs into a life-changing journey about true love, secrets, and a shocking redemption. Stick around to see how the nurse who just wanted to comfort a patient ended up inheriting a fortune. If you believe in destiny and that kindness should be rewarded, comment destiny right now. Like this video as a sign of respect for and subscribe so you don't miss a second of this heart-touching journey. Let's get into it. It was well past midnight at the Central Hospital, and the antiseptic smell of regret hung heavy in the air. Most of the staff had punched out, but one nurse, and Ray, couldn't bring herself to leave. It had been a brutal shift, capped off by a humiliating dressing down from her supervisor over a trivial mistake. She was bone-tired, just beat, but her feet, moving on their own, carried her back towards the charity ward. The target of her detour was room 12. Inside was Jeff Moody, the hospital's poorest patient. He was a vortex of negativity, a rude, demanding man who seemed to take pleasure in making the nurses' lives miserable. The rest of the staff avoided him like the plague, seeing him as a thankless burden. They'd mutter about him at the nurses' station, their voices dripping with disdain. Anne, however, just saw a terribly lonely man. What and Ray didn't know what nobody knew was that Jeff Moody was a phantom. The poor patient was a front, a secret identity meticulously crafted by a billionaire. This entire hospital stay was a grim, cynical kindness test. Jeff was on a quest to find a single person who wasn't motivated by greed, and so far, he was coming up empty. He hated what his fortune had shown him about people. She quietly pushed open his door, the light from the hall cutting a thin slice into the darkness. "Mr. Moody?" "Jeff?" she whispered, not wanting to startle him. He grunted from the bed, his eyes snapping open, already laced with suspicion. He was expecting another rough checkup, another sigh of exasperation. He was primed for a fight, ready to confirm his bleak worldview. Here we go again, he thought, bracing himself for the usual drama. But Anne just smiled, a tired, genuine smile. "I know you had a rough day," she said softly. I did too." She wasn't aware this was a kindness test, she was just being human. She adjusted his pillow, not with the brisk efficiency of the others, but with a heart-touching gentleness. Jeff Moody, the billionaire cynic, just watched her. He was momentarily speechless, an emotional state he wasn't accustomed to. This tiny act of defiance against the day's cruelty was a life-changing moment, though neither of them could possibly grasp it yet. Anne was just trying to survive her humiliating shift, and Jeff was just running his bitter test. But destiny had just pushed two very different worlds together. The plot twist of their lives was already in motion, all starting with one nurse deciding to stay late. He watched her, his mind racing, trying to figure out her angle. What did she want? Money? Easier shifts? A promotion? The idea that she wanted nothing was so foreign to him, it felt impossible. This love story. This romance. It didn't start with fireworks. It started in the quiet, sterile gloom of a hospital room, with an act of pure, unadulterated kindness. As she walked back to her station, and replayed the head nurse's humiliating words in her head. She was inefficient, too soft, lacking focus. The verbal lashing had stung, making her act of kindness toward Jeff feel less like compassion and more like a quiet rebellion. She wasn't just being nice, she was proving to herself that her humanity was intact. This hospital was a pressure cooker, but the real world waiting for her at home was, in some ways, even worse. She was just trying to hold on, but it was getting harder every day. This poor woman had a mountain of problems that the rich man in that bed couldn't possibly fathom. Or so she thought. The drama of Ray's life wasn't confined to the hospital walls. Far from it. Her small apartment was a shrine to final notices, the red ink on the envelope screaming at her every time she came home. She was drowning in student loans and medical debt for her late mother. She was working soul-crushing double shifts just to keep her head above water, and man, she was tired. It would have been so easy for her to cut corners, to adopt the same callous indifference as her colleagues. Especially with Jeff Moody. Ignoring the rude charity case was, frankly, the path of least resistance. It's just not worth the hassle. It would have earned her points with the head nurse and saved her precious, dwindling energy. But that just wasn't, and Jeff, for his part, seemed determined to break her. He was relentless. "This water is practically sludge," he'd bark. "Are you trying to poison me with this soup? It's cold." He was rude, demanding, and utterly exhausting. He was pushing every button he could find, actively trying to find her breaking point. This kindness test was designed to fail, and he was the lead saboteur. Yet, Anne remained the only nurse who treated him with genuine, unwavering compassion. She'd just take a deep breath, that same tired smile returning. "I'm so sorry, Jeff. Let me see if I can get the kitchen to warm that up for you." She saw the difficult exterior, sure, but she also saw the terrified, lonely man underneath it all. She saw the human being that the billionaire had worked so hard to hide. It's a test that most people, if they were truly honest with themselves, would probably fail. When you're that tired, that broke, and that humiliated at work, patience is the first luxury to go. What would you really do in her shoes? It's a tough question, and her answer showed the true, shocking strength of her character. Her kindness was her shield and her weapon. It was the one thing they couldn't take from her. While others saw Jeff as a charity case, a black hole of resources, and saw a person. This emotional resilience was baffling to Jeff, who was used to people who were either sycophants or openly hostile.
This poor woman was proven to be wealthier in spirit than anyone had ever met in his rich man circles. She was the only one who didn't flinch, who didn't treat him like a burden. This simple, consistent compassion was doing more than just passing his kindness test. It was beginning to chip away at the ice around his heart. He didn't know what to do with it. This life-changing encounter was not going according to plan, and the billionaire was starting to feel. Seen, she never spoke of her own troubles. Not once. She had listened to his complaints, all while her own fortune was crumbling. This rich man, poor woman dynamic was completely inverted. She, the one with nothing, was the giver. He, the one with everything, was the taker. It was a plot twist on his entire social theory. He watched her. He documented every interaction in a hidden journal. He was baffled. His whole billionaire worldview was built on transactions, on quid pro quo. This wasn't a transaction. He was becoming obsessed with figuring her out. What makes Ray tick? He had to know. To really get Jeff Moody, you've got to understand his fortune. It was a curse disguised as a blessing. This billionaire was surrounded by sharks, yes-men, and leeches. It was a total circus. Had seen family members turn on each other for a percentage, and so-called friends vanished the second the free ride ended. He was utterly disgusted by the greed his wealth attracted. His cynicism was bone deep. He truly, passionately believed that kindness was just a transaction. It was a currency. People were nice to him to get something. A donation, a job, an investment. True love? That was just a marketing term for the most expensive, hostile takeover of all. This belief system was his armor, protecting him from more disappointment. What a sad way to live. That's why he created the kindness test. This secret identity as a poor, dying man was his last-ditch effort to prove his dark theory correct. He wanted the staff at this hospital to fail. He wanted them to fawn over the wealthy patients and treat poor Jeff like dirt. It would just confirm what he already knew, that humanity was a lost cause, and his fortune was the only thing people truly respected. And Ray walked in. She was a glitch in his perfectly constructed, miserable matrix. She didn't want anything. He was rude, and she was patient. He was demanding, and she was accommodating. She wasn't supposed to exist. This nurse was dismantling his entire worldview, one warm blanket and one soft-spoken word at a time. It was terrifying. He'd lie there at night, long after his shift ended, just replaying their interactions. What's her angle? He'd rack his brain. Maybe she thought he had a secret stash? No, that was absurd. Head had his team do a background check. She was the one in crippling debt. The rich man, poor woman script was flipped. The poor woman was the one giving, and the rich man was the one taking. This romance, if you could even call it that yet, wasn't built on attraction. It was built on shock. Jeff Moody, the cynical billionaire, was starting to feel something he hadn't felt in decades. It was a strange, emotional flutter. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was confusion. And, for the first time, it was a tiny, dangerous spark of hope. He was disgusted by the greed his wealth attracted, but he was fascinated by the kindness his poverty attracted from her. This love story was a complete accident, a plot twist in his own bitter script. And Ray was the one variable he never saw coming. And she was about to change the entire equation of his life-changing experiment. He wasn't just confused, he was angry. He almost resented her for it. This nurse was an anomaly that threatened the very foundations of his identity. Head built his whole life on the premise that people were terrible, and her simple existence made him a liar. He almost hated her for it. It was a complex, emotional storm. He began to watch the hospital drama through a new lens. He saw how the other staff treated her with a mix of pity and disdain. He saw the arrogant head nurse watching him like a hawk, just waiting for her to slip up. He knew a confrontation was brewing. The air was electric, and was walking right into the middle of it. The simmering drama at the hospital was about to boil over. It all came to a head on a Tuesday. The head nurse, a woman who seemed to have a personal vendetta against compassion, spotted in Ray and Jeff's room. It was the middle of a chaotic shift, and she was not happy. She stormed down the hall, her sensible shoes squeaking with indignation. You could just feel the temperature drop. She didn't bother with privacy. Oh no. She planted herself in the doorway, hands on her hips, and bellowed. "Nurse Ray." Again, her voice was a whip crack in the quiet corridor. "Are you seriously wasting time with him?" The hymn was laced with so much venom, it practically dripped, and flinched, her face instantly flooding with color. She was completely, totally humiliated. Other nurses and even a few patients peeked out of their rooms, watching the car crash unfold. "I was just checking his," and began, her voice small. "You were coddling," the head nurse snapped. "We have actual priorities. We have wealthy patients on the third floor who are waiting for their 2 p.m. medications. They are the ones who pay your salary, in case you forgot." This was the hospital's dirty secret. Spoken aloud. The rich man gets the care, the poor man gets the scraps. It was a shocking and brutal confirmation of everything Jeff Moody, the billionaire in disguise, believed. He heard every single acidic word from his bed, and his hands clenched into fists beneath the thin blanket. This was it. This was the ugliness Head been looking for, and just stood there, humiliated and shaking, tears welling in her eyes. He's also a patient," she whispered, a desperate, flimsy defense. The head nurse laughed, a short, barking sound. "He's a charity case, a drain. Your job is to prioritize our assets, not our liabilities. Get to the third floor. Now." The order was final. It was cold. It was inhuman. It's a level of cruelty that's just hard to watch. What single word even describes the head nurse's attitude? Callous doesn't even begin to cover the shocking unprofessionalism. The audacity is just off the charts, and you can just feel Ann's heartbreaking in that awful, public moment. It's a drama nobody should have to endure. Ann finally nodded, defeated, She scurried past the head nurse, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. She felt worthless, like her kindness was a character flaw. But this plot twist, this public shaming, it was a pivotal moment in Jeff's kindness test. The stakes had just been raised. Now, being kind to him wasn't just nice. It was an act of open rebellion. The ripple effect was immediate. The other nurses watched the entire humiliating exchange, and nobody said a word. They wouldn't meet Anne's eye. They were too scared for their own jobs. This drama served its purpose. It isolated and completely. It made her kindness a solitary, dangerous, and fireable offense, and walked away, humiliated to her core. The head nurse's words were a direct, unambiguous order. Prioritize the wealthy patients. Stay away from the charity case. And career was explicitly on the line. The drama had presented her with a life-changing choice: her job or her humanity, and she had to choose. And Ray was shattered. The head nurse's words echoed in her ears, a soundtrack of humiliation. She spent the next hour on the third floor, tending to the wealthy patients. They were demanding in a different way, entitled, impatient, treating her less like a nurse and more like a servant. It was a soul-crushing experience. She did her job, but her heart wasn't in it. Her heart was still back in room 12. As her shift officially ended, she was faced with a choice. She could punch out, go home to her mountain of debt, and just give up, bite the bullet, be the cold, efficient nurse they wanted her to be. Or she could defy the order. She could choose her kindness over her career. She stood at the crossroads, her hospital ID feeling like a 50-pound weight around her neck. This was a life-changing decision, a true test of who she was. Her redemption wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about saving her own soul. She wasn't going to let them make her as ugly as they were. Not a chance. She made her choice. Quietly, almost like a spy, she went to the staff room. She took her own meager lunches simple. Warm meals she had been looking forward to all day, and a book of poetry she kept in her locker. She wasn't just defying the order. She was sacrificing her own comfort. This was an act of true love for humanity. She slipped back into Jeff's room. He was staring at the ceiling, his face a mask of cold fury after what had overheard. He looked up, shocked to see her. "You're back?" he rasped. "I thought you were ordered to stay away from the charity case." He was baiting her, testing her, daring her to admit defeat. He, the billionaire, was still convinced she'd break, and just smiled sadly and held out the container. "You didn't eat your dinner. This is mine, but I think you need it more." She sat down, not waiting for a thank you. "And I thought, maybe I could read to you? It helps me when I'm feeling like today." She saw the lonely man behind the difficult exterior, and she refused to let him be alone. This was it. This was the moment Jeff's walls didn't just crack, they imploded. He, a billionaire who could buy restaurants, was being offered a simple nurse's lunch. It was the most valuable gift had ever received. The emotional weight of it was staggering. He just stared at her, this humiliated woman, offering him her kindness as a shield. She opened the book and began to read. Her voice was soft, a gentle melody in the sterile hospital room. It was a heart-touching sanctuary. For a moment, they weren't the rich man and the poor woman. They weren't the billionaire and the nurse. They were just two lonely souls, finding a moment of peace in the middle of the drama. Jeff was floored, but the cynic in him wasn't dead. This is too good to be true. She must want something. His kindness test wasn't over. He had to push. He had to see if this angel had a breaking point. He was about to get mean. He had to know for sure if this kindness was real. Jeff was impressed. No, he was shaken. But decades of cynicism die hard. You don't build a fortune by being trusting. A part of his billionaire brain, the cold, calculating part, was still screaming it's a trick. It has to be this kindness. It's just a long con, a really good one. This nurse and Ray must be the smartest actor he's ever met. So he doubled down. He was impressed, but still skeptical. He decided to test her integrity, to push her until that sweet facade cracked. He had to find her breaking point. Everyone has one. His kindness test wasn't over, it had just entered its final, brutal phase. He had to know if this rich man, poor woman dynamic was just another drama she was playing. The next day, he was a monster. This book you're reading, he snapped, it's dreadful. Is your taste in everything this bad? He complained relentlessly. He criticized her uniform. He told her she was too soft for this hospital, and that's why she'd always be humiliated. He was awful, throwing every insecurity he could find right back in her face. He was trying to find the real and the one who must be hiding behind that heart-touching smile. He needed her to yell at him, to storm out, to finally show her greed and say, "What's in it for me?" He poked and prodded at her emotional state, like a scientist dissecting a rare specimen. This plot twister genuine goodness was something he wouldn't accept. It's one thing to be nice to a grumpy patient. It's another to be nice to someone who is personally insulting your character. If someone attacked you like that, after all you've done, could you still show them kindness? It's a real test of emotional strength, and it's a question worth asking yourself. Most people would have walked, and never wavered. She'd absorbed the insults with a quiet, sad patience. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Jeff," she'd say, her voice steady. "But it'll still be back tomorrow, just in case you change your mind about the poetry." She wasn't just being nice, she was being strong. She was a fortress of compassion, and his attacks just bounced off her. Jeff Moody was at a loss. He, the billionaire who could move markets and crush competitors, was being utterly disarmed by one nurse with nothing to her name. His secret identity was meant to protect him, but he was starting to realize she was the one with the real armor. His kindness test had failed. By finding the one person who passed, this infuriated him in a new way. His fortune had always been able to buy a reaction. He could make people cry, scream, or grovel. He couldn't make her flinch. This poor woman had a power his billionaire status can't touch. It was maddening. He was the one who was breaking, not her. He was at a loss. He was the one who was vulnerable. And as his attacks softened, as he ran out of drama to throw at her, her steady warmth started to really get in. The love story, or whatever this was taking a shocking turn. He was losing control, and his patience was more than just a professional courtesy. It was a force of nature. She kept showing up day after day, despite the head nurse's threats and Jeff's relentless barrage of insults. She never wavered. She'd bring him coffee. She'd talk about the weather. She just stayed. She showed him only patience and warmth, a constant, steady light in his self-imposed darkness. And with every visit, a piece of the emotional wall around Jeff's heart crumbled. This nurse, this poor woman, was slowly dismantling a fortress that his fortune had built over 30 years. He started to complain less. He'd grunt a thank you every now and then. He even asked her to read from the dreadful book of poetry. Now, that's what you call a plot twist. This wasn't a whirlwind romance you see in movies. This was something deeper, more heart-touching. It was a slow, painful, and beautiful process of a man's redemption. He was learning, for the first time, what true love, not romantic love, but real, unconditional human regard actually felt like. It was life-changing. He was the rich man, but she was the one with the real treasure. He started to see the world through her eyes. He saw the drama of the hospital, the petty jealousies, the exhaustion, the quiet moments of kindness between other staff members that had been too cynical to notice before. And warmth wasn't just for him, it was for everyone. She was the hospital's beating heart, even as she was being humiliated for it. This kind of strength is just incredible. She's facing pressure from the top and from the patient, and she's not breaking. You almost want to give her a round of applause through the screen. That kind of fortitude. It's a fortune all its own. She's earned that respect, this kindness rewarded. Well, it hadn't shown up yet, but she deserved it. Jeff Moody, the billionaire, was terrified. He was starting to care about this nurse. He felt protective. When he heard the head nurse snap at her down the hall, his blood boiled. He, who had built an empire on an every man for himself philosophy, was suddenly, desperately invested in the destiny of Ray. The kindness test was over. He was the one who had been tested, and he was the one who had been changed. His secret identity felt less like a tool and more like a coward's disguise. He knew he had to end this, to reveal himself. He had to protect her. He started making plans. One more day, he thought. He'd have his team prepare the legal work. The transfer of ownership. He would reveal himself, end this drama, and reward her kindness. He just needed one more day to get his billionaire ducks in a row. But he was too slow. He wasn't the only one watching, and in the shadows of the hospital corridors, another drama was brewing. A jealous rival had seen this heart-touching bond, and she wasn't just annoyed. She was plotting. Of course, not everyone saw Ann's kindness as a virtue. You know how it goes. In the competitive, high-stress drama of a hospital, one person's light often makes another feel like they're in the shadows. A rival nurse, a woman named Nurse Davis, had been watching in Ray with growing, toxic jealousy. She couldn't stand the attention Ann was getting. Davis was the kind of person who played the game. She kissed up to the head nurse, did the bare minimum for problem patients, and spent most of her time gossiping. She was particularly annoyed by the heart-touching little bond she saw forming between Ann and the charity case, Jeff Moody. Why was Ann wasting so much time on that old jerk? It made no sense to her. She'd watch and slip into Jeff's room after her shift, bringing him meals and reading to him. Davis didn't see kindness, she saw stupidity. Or, even worse, she saw a ploy. Maybe Ann knew something she didn't. Maybe the old man wasn't as poor as he looked. The jealousy festered, turning into suspicion and, finally, into a dark, calculated plot. Nurse Davis wanted Ann gone. Ann's genuine compassion made her own superficial efforts look bad. She was a threat, and in the cutthroat environment of this hospital, threats had to be neutralized. So, she began plotting. It started small, forgetting to pass on messages to, and accidentally misplacing her charts. Petty, nasty stuff. But as the days went on and Ann's bond with Jeff seemed to strengthen, Davis' plan escalated. She needed something big, something irreversible. She needed to get Ann fired. She saw her opportunity when a very wealthy patient on the third floor, one of the rich men the head nurse adored, was prescribed a heavy-duty, expensive pain medication. This was it. This was her chance. A shocking idea formed in her mind, a plan so cruel it was almost brilliant. She would use Ann's own kindness against her. She would frame her for stealing. After all, everyone knew Ann was desperate for money. It was the perfect, humiliating setup. The plot twist was no longer in Jeff's hands, it was in the hands of a rival. The billionaire in room 12, lost in his own emotional redemption and planning his grand reveal, had no idea. He was completely unaware that a life-changing storm was about to break over the one person he'd come to care about. The destiny of Ann Ray was about to be hijacked by a simple, ugly act of jealousy. This rival nurse wasn't just jealous, she was friends with the head nurse. They took their smoke breaks together, gossiping about the hospital drama. Davis knew exactly which buttons to push to get the head nurse to act without an investigation. This was a calculated, cold-blooded execution. The plan was set. The medication was identified. The shift change was the perfect time. The trap was laid. The shocking plot twist was no longer in Jeff's control. Ann's destiny was about to be shattered, and the billionaire's kindness test was about to have tragic, unforeseen consequences. The plan was set in motion. Nurse Davis, with a chilling calmness, pocketed a vial of high-grade medication from the wealthy patient's private room. She knew the counts were done at shift change. It was now or never. She slipped the vial into the pocket of Ann Ray's coat, which was hanging in the staff locker room. A simple, devastating act. She then went straight to the head nurse. "I don't want to cause trouble," Davis began, her voice dripping with fake concern, but I saw Nurse Ray acting. Odd. Near the third-floor medication cart. And you know how she's always complaining about her debts. It was a perfect bait. The head nurse, who already despised and saw her chance to finally get rid of the inefficient nurse. The head nurse didn't hesitate. She didn't ask questions. She didn't want an investigation. She wanted Ann to be guilty. She stormed into the staff room, just as Ann was grabbing her coat to finally go home. "Nurse Ray, empty your pockets." Now, the order was sharp, public, and humiliating. and, confused, did as she was told. And there it was, the vial, and blood ran cold. I don't know, she stammered, her mind racing. I've never seen that. I would never. But her pleas were useless. Nurse Davis watched from the doorway, a mask of shocked disappointment on her face. The head nurse just smiled, a cold, triumphant smirk. Stealing from a rich man. Our most important patient. Disgusting. You are fired, effective immediately, the head nurse declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. Security will escort you from the hospital. We will, of course, be reporting this. And was devastated. She was framed, humiliated, and discarded, all in the span of 30 seconds. There was no investigation, no chance to defend herself. Just gone. This is it. The ultimate falsa Dorota. This is the moment where everything looks utterly, hopelessly lost. The kindness she had shown, the romance that was blooming, the redemption she had inspired. All of it was erased. The plot twist was brutal. Her love story with humanity had just ended in a shocking betrayal. She was marched out of the hospital like a criminal, her face stained with tears. The drama was over. The bad guys had won. And Ray, the kindest nurse on the floor, was now unemployed, disgraced, and facing potential charges. All because a rival was jealous and a boss was corrupt. This is the definition of injustice. Her colleagues watched. They saw the drama unfold, and no one spoke up. They were too afraid of the head nurse. They just looked away as and was escorted out. This hospital culture was one of fear, and it was its latest victim. The silence was deafening. She was on the street, the cold night air hitting her face. It was over. Her life, her career, everything. She didn't just feel humiliated, she was destroyed. What happens now? The life-changing blow had landed, and she had no idea what to do, and stumbled out onto the street, the hospital doors swinging shut behind her with a dreadful finality. The city lights blurred through her tears. She was devastated. It wasn't just a job. It was her name, her identity. Everything she had worked for, her entire life, had been destroyed in an instant. That feeling, it's just gut-wrenching. She felt like she couldn't breathe. She walked home in a daze, the security guard's hand on her back, still burning in her memory. Humiliated, framed, fired, the words echoed in her head. She, a nurse, accused of stealing. It was a life-changing nightmare. She thought about Jeff Moody, the grumpy patient she had poured her heart into. What would he think? He'd probably just assumed she was a thief. That thought, that was what hurt the most. He would die believing his cynical view of the world was right, that she was just another fraud. Her kindness hadn't saved him. It had just been the setup for the final, shocking betrayal. She had confirmed his worst fears about humanity. She collapsed onto her sofa, the pile of red ink bills on her table seeming to mock her. Her one act of kindness. Her defiance in caring for Jeff. That's what did this. If she had just been cold, like the others, if she had just ignored him, she would still have a job. It felt like a shocking punishment from the universe. Destiny had played a cruel joke. Her belief in the world, her core philosophy that kindness matters. It was shattered. What's the point? She thought, bitterness welling up. What's the point of being good if this is a reward? She had given her all to that hospital and had thrown her away without a second thought. The drama had broken her. This is the absolute lowest point. It's hard to even find a word for how that feels. Heartbroken doesn't cover it. Betrayed doesn't cover it. It's the definition of a life-changing injustice, and it feels so unfair. She had no redemption. She had no fortune. She had nothing. She believed her life was over. Her career was destroyed. She had no references, no money, and now, a black mark on her record. That one act of kindness had cost her everything. She had no idea about the billionaire in room 12, or the secret identity, or the kindness test. All she knew was that her act of love had destroyed her. She cried herself to sleep, believing this was the end. She was just another casualty in a cruel world. Another poor woman crushed by the system. The love story she had been writing, not with man, but with her own compassion, had been torn to shreds. It was the darkest night of her life. But she was wrong. Jeff was not dead, and he was not cynical anymore. He was just confused. Where was she? He was waiting for his poetry. The billionaire was about to find out what happened, and the plot twist was far from over. Back in room 12, Jeff Moody, still in disguise, had a very bad feeling, and hadn't come for her evening reading. That wasn't like her. It was the first night she had missed. He buzzed for a nurse, and Nurse Davis, the rival, was the one who answered. Oh, the irony! Where's and Ray? Jeff demanded, his voice already gravelly with suspicion. Davis put on her best fake sad face. Oh, you haven't heard? She was fired. Caught stealing medication from the third-floor penthouse suite. Such a shame. She said it with a sickening, feigned sympathy, barely hiding her glee. Jeff's blood ran cold. Stealing? And? No, absolutely not. He knew that woman. He knew her soul. This was wrong. He watched, heartbroken and furious, as a hospital machine churned on without her. He watched the head nurse laugh with Nurse Davis at the station. He saw the cold, efficient Betemti care resume. The only genuine person he had ever met, the one person who had passed his cynical kindness test, had just been punished for her virtue. It was his fault. The billionaire was crushed by the emotional weight of it. His test, his stupid, arrogant secret identity, had put her in the line of fire. Had been so focused on his own redemption, he hadn't thought about protecting her. Had let this heart-touching nurse be humiliated and destroyed while he sat there, safe in his disguise. This changes everything. The game was over. The kindness test had concluded with a shocking plot twist Had never anticipated. It wasn't about finding kindness anymore. It was about avenging it. The drama was no longer about his cynical worldview. It was about justice. Kindness must be rewarded and cruelty must be punished. He picked up the burner phone he had hidden under his mattress. He made one call. It's done, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Buy it, now. Buy the whole hospital chain. And have my car here at 8 a.m. The man on the other end, his CEO, just said, Yes, Mr. Moody. Jeff hung up. The billionaire was done playing patient. He was heartbroken, yes, but beneath that was a cold, pure rage he hadn't felt in years. The love story had just started to believe and had been attacked. They messed with the wrong nurse. He watched the sunrise, not as poor Jeff, but as Jeff Moody, a man who was about to bring his entire fortune and fury down on this unsuspecting hospital. His secret identity had served its purpose. It had shown him the worst of humanity, but it had also shown him the best. Now, that identity was a liability. It was time for the rich man to return. It was time for a reckoning. The hospital staff had no idea. They thought they had just gotten rid of a problem nurse. They were about to meet their new owner. The morning was going to be life-changing. The next morning, the hospital was buzzing. Rumors were flying. The entire hospital board had been fired overnight. An emergency all-staff meeting was called for 9 a.m. The head nurse and Nurse Davis were preening, assuming this was about the improvement in efficiency now that problem nurses like and were gone. They had no idea what was coming. At 9 a.m. sharp, the auditorium doors opened. The staff filed in, whispering, and then he walked in. Gasps. It was Jeff Moody. But not Jeff Moody. Not the charity case. This man was in a $20,000 bespoke suit, his hair perfectly groomed. He was flanked by lawyers. He wasn't walking like a patient. He was walking like he owned the place. Because now he did. Boom. The plot twist. This was a shocking reveal. The head nurse's jaw hit the floor. Her face went white. Nurse Davis looked like she had seen a ghost. This was a life-changing moment for every single person in that room. The billionaire they had all heard rumors about, the one who was considering a donation, was a charity case they had all ignored. Good morning, Jeff Moody said, his voice amplified by the microphone. It was the same voice, but the power behind it was new. It was cold. For the past 2 weeks, I have been a patient in this hospital. You knew me as Jeff Moody in room 12. As of 4 a.m. this morning, I am the new owner of this entire healthcare system. The drama was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. The rich man wasn't just a rich man, he was the rich man. The secret identity was gone. This wasn't just a kindness test anymore, it was a reckoning. The humiliated patient was now the most powerful man they had ever met. Talk about a reversal of fortune. Yeast, is your heart pounding? This is the drama we've been waiting for. You can almost feel the cheer rising in your chest. This is kindness rewarded, or at least kindness avenged. The redemption is finally here, and it is going to be sweet. Jeff just stood there for a moment, letting the shocking news sink in. He scanned the crowd, his eyes landing on the head nurse, and then on Nurse Davis. They looked terrified, as they should be. The billionaire had seen the true face of his hospital, and now he was going to show them his. This was going to be emotional. He let the shock hang in the air for a few more seconds, savoring the panic. He wanted them to understand the life-changing mistake they had made. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was a judge. He was the instrument of destiny. We have a lot to discuss, Jeff said, his voice dangerously calm. About culture, about compassion. But first, we have to correct a grave injustice. Someone, please roll the footage. The show is just getting started. An analyst at a laptop hit a key, and the giant screen behind Jeff Moody flickered to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint. It was hospital security footage. The staff watched confused as it showed the third-floor medication room. Then it showed Nurse Davis looking left and right before pocketing the vial. The shocking truth was right there in high definition. The auditorium was silent. You could hear a pin drop. The footage then switched to the locker room, showing Nurse Davis planting the vial in and Ray's coat. And finally, it showed the head nurse firing and, without a single question, the head nurse's smug, triumphant face was projected 10 feet high for everyone to see. The humiliation was exquisite. As you can see, Jeff continued, his voice like ice, Nurse and Ray is not a thief. She is a victim. He turned his burning gaze on Nurse Davis. She was a victim of a jealous, corrupt nurse. Then he turned to the head nurse. And a negligent, corrupt head nurse who was more interested in firing a good person than finding the truth. Nurse Davis just crumpled, sobbing. The head nurse was shaking, muttering, This is illegal. You can't. I can. Jeff cut her off. I own the footage. I own the hospital. And you, he said, pointing at the head nurse, are fired. He then pointed to Nurse Davis. And you are being charged with theft, defamation, and reckless endangerment. Security. 2 new guards as guards moved in and took both women by the arm. The drama was unbelievable. This was a redemption of biblical proportions. The shocking plot twist wasn't just that he was a billionaire, it was that he had seen everything. The kindness test had ended. And now, the judgment was being handed down. Oh, wow. How satisfying was that? On a scale of 110, how good did it feel to see that footage play? It's that heart-touching moment of justice we were all waiting for. And kindness is finally being rewarded, even if she doesn't know it yet. That felt good. Jeff Moody watched him be escorted out, his face hard as stone. The emotional weight in the room was immense. The rest of the staff was shocked, terrified, and deep down relieved. The hospital's toxic leadership was gone, but Jeff wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The rest of the staff was still there, terrified. Were they next? Jeff looked at them, his face unreadable. This hospital's culture is over. The kindness test is complete. Most of you failed. You could feel the panic. But one of you... Now, he said, turning back to the crowd, let's talk about the real star of this story. My personal driver is currently on his way to pick up the only nurse in this hospital who passed the test. He was bringing her back. And Ray, meanwhile, was at her apartment, on the phone with an employment agency, trying to explain the unexplainable. I know what it looks like, she pleaded, but I swear I was framed. It was hopeless. She was humiliated and defeated. This was her new life. Then there was a knock, a sharp, expensive-sounding knock. She opened the door to find a man in a black suit. Ms. and Ray? He asked. I'm from Mr. Moody's office. He has requested your immediate presence back at the hospital. And his heart stopped. Moody? Jeff Moody? Why? Are they pressing charges? She whispered, terrified. The driver just shook his head. The car is waiting, ma'am. She arrived at the hospital, terrified and confused. The driver didn't take her to security. He took her to the main auditorium. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely stand. What is this? Why is everyone here? She thought this was a life-changing nightmare, the final act of her humiliation. This must be a mistake. The driver opened the doors, and she walked in. The entire hospital staff went silent. All eyes turned to her. And there on the stage was Jeff. But it wasn't her Jeff. It wasn't a charity case. It was a billionaire from the news, the one they'd all been whispering about. Jeff Moody. Her Jeff was the Jeff. Her mind just broke. And he said, his voice no longer cold, but full of a heart-touching, emotional warmth that she recognized instantly. He walked off the stage, right up to her, ignoring everyone else. She just stared, shocked, her brain trying to connect the two images. The poor, dying man, and this powerful billionaire. Jeff, she whispered. This was the plot twist of her destiny, the rich man, poor woman drama. It was all what? A test. She was terrified, confused, and suddenly, dizzyingly angry at what is going on. She asked, her voice stronger than she expected. This was too much of the emotional roller coaster for her, and was almost too much to bear the confusion, the shock, that relief, and angered she was part of the test. A billionaire's cruel game. Her humiliation flashed back. She suddenly felt used. This wasn't a rescue. It was a puppet show that Jeff saw that flash of anger in her eyes. He recognized it. He knew congratulations wasn't the right move. He had to fix this. He had to earn her trust. For real this time, he had to apologize that in front of everyone that Jeff gently led her to the front of the room that the nurse and the billionaire, their love story about to be revealed. He took a deep breath. This was the most important meeting of his life, and his entire fortune couldn't help him that Jeff Moody turned to face his new staff. But his focus was entirely on Ray, who stood beside him, shocked and trembling for the last 2 weeks. He announced, his voice booming with emotion. I have been living a lie. He looked at it, and I came to this hospital not for treatment, but for a test, a kindness test. He explained everything that his billionaire status, that his fortune that is complete. Disgust with the greed of the world, his secret identity was a desperate, cynical ploy to prove that kindness was dead. I wanted to prove, he said, his voice thick, that everyone had a price, that compassion was just a transaction. The whole room was captivated. And I was right, he continued. About almost everyone he paused, then turned to and taken her hands until I met her, until this nurse, who was being humiliated by her superiors and had nothing, was the only person who showed me true, genuine kindness. He looked directly into her eyes, and I heard what the head nurse said to you. I heard her order you to ignore me, and then you came back. You brought me your own food. You read to me. He had a pause, the emotional weight of the memory hitting him. You didn't know I was a billionaire. You just saw a lonely man, and you saved me in front of everyone. The powerful Jeff Moody, the man who had just fired 2 people and bought a hospital, that publicly apologized. I am so sorry. And he said, his voice breaking, my test put you in danger. It got you fired. It was my fault, and I will spend the rest of my life making up to you, and was just crying tears of shock, of relief. This was a plot twist of a lifetime. The rich man wasn't just a rich man, he was her patient. The secret identity was revealed. The kindness test was over, and the poor woman. And she was the only one who had passed. The drama had reached its heart-touching peak. The humiliated nurse was now standing in front of her former colleagues. As a hero of the story, the billionaire had revealed his secret. But it had one more shocking reveal to go. This wasn't just a redemption for her name. It was the beginning of their destiny. This was her redemption. Her name was cleared. Her kindness wasn't a flaw. It was her superpower. The entire staff finally saw it. The drama was resolved, and the love story. It was just getting started. Jeff knew this wasn't enough. An apology doesn't fix the life-changing trauma she endured. He had to show her what her kindness was worth. This wasn't just about justice. It was about their destiny. He had one more announcement to make. Jeff Moody didn't let go of her hands. He looked back at the stunned audience of hospital staff. I came here looking for kindness, I found it, that, and I'm telling you all right now, that is a new currency in this hospital he turned back to, and his eyes shining in kindness, her integrity. That is the greatest fortune I've ever found. It's worth more than my entire company, which is why, he said, a smile finally breaking on his face, I'm not just offering Ray her job back. That's not good enough. I am offering her a new job as of this moment. And Ray is the new head of patient advocacy for this entire hospital system. That she will report directly to me. She will have the power to change everything. Gasped the humiliated nurse that was now running the hospital. It was the ultimate kindleness rewarded, a life-changing redemption. But Jeff, he wasn't done. This was a love story. After all, he lowered his voice, so only she could really hear the next part. But I have one more offer, to a personal one. He, the billionaire, the rich man who had seen all, looked terrified. And in love. And he whispered, you didn't just pass my kindness test, you taught me how to be human again. This started as a drama, but it's turned into a romance, my romance, that I've fallen in love with you. I know this is. That's shocking. I know it's a plot twist you never asked for, but I am offering you everything, my heart, my fortune, all of it. And Ray stared at him, tears streaming from humiliated. To love, from poor woman. To everything. This was destiny. This was true love. This is it. This is the ending we deserved. This is the kind of story that makes you want to cheer for kindness. This is the ultimate kindness rewarded. The love story has its heart-touching finale, a shocking conclusion to an emotional journey. And looked at the billionaire and saw Jeff, her patient, her friend, the lonely man she refused to give up on. She wasn't looking at his fortune. She was looking at him, and she smiled, a real smile. Yes, she whispered. Yes, the hospital auditorium erupted in applause. The drama was over. The love story had begun. The humiliated nurse had found her destiny, and the billionaire had found his redemption. And it was all because one nurse stayed late to comfort a lonely patient. Their life-changing journey was just beginning. A true love story born from a single, selfless act of kindness in the end. It wasn't the billionaire's fortune that mattered. It was in kindness. This emotional story is a powerful, heart-touching reminder that your character is the only currency that truly holds its value. And a single act of compassion can be life-changing. If you also believe that kindness is a superpower and that true love and decency deserve to be rewarded, then you found your place. To subscribe and join our community of people who know that goodness is never a weakness, like this video, to help spread this life-changing message of hope. For our question, what was the exact moment in this drama that hit you the hardest? The shocking plot twist? The public redemption? Let us know in the comments, and share this video with one person who needs to be reminded that their kindness matters. And while you wait for our next story, know that our channel is a treasure chest of emotional journeys just like this. One that explore our older videos and discover other heart-touching stories of drama, redemption, and shocking plot twists. To make sure you don't miss any of the incredible stories we're going to tell next, activate that notification bell. You won't want to be left out of the next life-changing moment. We'll see you in the next one.